Welcome to Film Strip, movie reviews presented by Continuous Play Podcast. These podcasts are spoiler-filled as we discuss the plots, characters, and themes of the films in review. All content used or discussed in these podcast episodes is the property of the respective owners and used under the Fair Use Act, Section 504, C2, Title 17.
Welcome to Film Strip. I'm Jay.
I'm Brian.
And I'm Ron.
And this is our review of Scream 2, starring Neve Campbell, Courtney Cox, David Arquette, Jamie Kennedy, Liev Schreiber, Jerry O'Connell, Timothy Olyphant, Laurie Metcalf, Elise Neal, Sarah Michelle Gellar, Omar Epps, and Jada Pinkett. Written by Kevin Williamson and directed by Wes Craven, released in 1997, less than a year after the first one, on a budget of $24 million, grossed $172.4 million at the box office. So for a $7 million bump in budget, they got only $600,000 less back on the return of this. This was a massive, massive hit in 97. And I remember being turned onto the Scream franchise again, as we talked about last time, after seeing the first one. And the sequel was coming out. Oh, holy cow. I was there opening weekend. I remember. And before we get into memories of Scream 2, though, specifically, we got to talk a little bit about sequels in horror franchises. I mean, guys, we've reviewed a lot of them here. Just between the three of us, we've done a lot of them, and then I've done other ones with Nick, too, and with Anna. And I wanted to ask you guys, what are some of your favorite sequels or part twos in series that we've talked about, or maybe ones we haven't talked about here?
You're going to lose me here.
One of my favorites is still the Friday the 13th with the psychic, and I still, for some pointless reason, I really enjoy the part of Jason Takes Manhattan, where Jason's actually in Manhattan, although it takes way too long to get there.
That's true. So Brian, no love for like Leprechaun 2 or anything? Halloween 2? You know?
No love for Leprechaun Back to the Hood.
Okay, there you go. Back to the Hood 2, if you want to call that a sequel.
Yeah, Back to the Hood would good.
Make my list.
Yeah, Back to the Hood was good. The two Hood Leprechaun movies, I'm just going to go ahead and say, are the best ones in the series, people. So, I mean, you don't even need the rest. So,
well, I mean, I'm trying to think of some of the sequels that are actually considered sequels. For like Nightmare on Elm Street 2 was horrible.
Disagree.
So, no. What'd you say?
Disagree.
You thought Nightmare on Elm Street 2 was good?
I didn't say it was good. It's watchable and enjoyable on a cult level.
Completely no. Totally veers off the whole subject of the damn film.
This is true.
We talked about this before. Yeah. You could pick that up in the archives.
Yeah.
Yuck. Other than that, sequels. The Crow was one of my favorite movies. That sequel sucked. Wayne's World 2 sucked.
Wayne's World sucked.
No, Wayne's World was great. Shut up.
Disagree.
Terrible.
Blues Brothers 2000.
Jurassic Park Lost World sucked.
Oh, God. Now you're really getting in the barrel.
I'm just reaching out for things I've seen sequels of. That's all. I can't really. WrestleMania 2 wasn't as good as the first.
Well, agreed. So, Clash of the Champions 2 lacked a little bit of something to be desired, but it had plenty of Dusty booking in it. So,
well, that's why it lacked. Well, we can get into that on another podcast.
Yeah. Now, I think the thing about sequels in horror franchises, and it is one of the, I mean, I remember it being like one of the trailers for this, was the whole discussion Randy and Dewey have about sequels. And I just remember that really resonating with me. I'm like, yeah, the body count's bigger, the kills are way more elaborate, and it's, it's always some kind of twist, or whatever else some of the other rules are. And, like, if you survive from one sequel to the next, it's rare to get out of the second one. Like, we saw that in the Nightmare series, Brian, that people that made it from one to the next one were usually off pretty quick. Friday the 13th, Tommy Jarvis is the only one I know besides Jason that made it from another one to another one, and he kind of lived. So, at the end of 6, we never saw him again. So, I don't know. It's hard to say. I'm a fan of Halloween 2. We talked about that on another show way back when. And I remember going into this thinking, man, it's the same. It's everybody back. You got everybody that survived the last movie back. You got Craven back in the director's chair. You got Williamson writing it again. there's no way this can be bad, right? Like in my head, I'm like, but there's so many places you could go because I didn't know anything. I didn't jack all about what this was going to be about. If it was going to be the same, bunch of people, or if we were going to replace them and do like a different story, I had no idea. So I went in pretty cold on it. And, I'll tell you guys, I watched this movie and I remember thinking, okay, yeah, that was entertaining. And then I watched it again sometime later on VHS, and every time I've tried to watch it, I've always come up a little bit lacking on this one. So it has a strange memory in my world and in my history here, because having liked the first one as much as I did, this one I feel like just misses so many things. So just initial impressions, like what did y'all think?
I completely forgot about this movie, like everything while I was watching. I'm like, I must skip this one when I watch Scream series because I completely forgot what even this whole plot was about. I remembered who the killer was, but that was about it.
Yeah, this one, I know that I have seen it, but I have no tangible memory of having watched it. It was like, eating Chinese food. It was gone after like 2 hours, and it was like I hadn't even eaten anything.
You stole my metaphor. I was going
to shit it out.
Write the time down on that, by the way. So anyway, no, you just stole my metaphor. I was going to use in my summation, so I'm going to blow it now. This is like the Little Caesars pizza. You've had pizza, but you don't really know what it consisted of when you're done with it. I feel like this has all of the markings of everything I would want of a horror sequel, yet I can't remember any of it either. And I've seen it way more times than Brian, but I had the same thing. Like I went into this and I was like, oh, I forgot that. Oh, that's when that happens. I thought that was the other movie. And like there was stuff I thought, there were things that happened in this one. I thought, oh wait, I thought Sarah Michelle was in the third one. Like I totally just brain locked on this movie. So it was a new experience for me around this time too. So this will be fun to get into and discuss as we go through it.
Well, Jay, since you want to do that, why don't you go ahead and give us a plot summary on this one?
Okay, look, there's the usual plot summary where we kind of talk through everything we see in this film, and then there's the summary of what in the heck is actually going on. And so I'm going to do this one from the, not necessarily what we see happen, but in the end, what we know is the story of Scream 2. Okay, so just hold on. Billy Loomis's mother, going by the alias Debbie Salt, recruits a young psychopath named Mickey Altieri to aid in her revenge plot to get back at Sidney Prescott, who thwarted her murdered son's rampage 2 years ago. She waits until Sidney is at Windsor College, along with Randy, in Ohio, far away from the horrors of Woodsboro in California. However, Sidney can't escape the attention after Gail Weathers' book on the murders is set to premiere as a film adaptation that weekend. Mrs. Loomis directs Mickey to kill 2 students at the film premiere, which throws the campus into panic and attracts media attention, including Gail Weathers. Dewey, partially inhibited by his injuries, shows up to provide support to the local authorities and his friends. And while Mickey hangs out at a party, Mrs. Loomis stalks and kills a student at another sorority house across the street, and the suspect list gets closer to Sidney, including her boyfriend Derek, who's injured, while she is chased by the killer. Gail, Randy, and Dewey get a call from the killer while sitting in the green space, and as they walk around looking to see who it might be, Randy is dragged into a news van and stabbed to death by Mrs. Loomis after he insults her son. Gail and Dewey review crowd footage shot by her cameraman who bailed after all the killing went down, and when Mrs. Loomis strikes again after separating the pair, stabs Dewey multiple times in the back. When 2 cops prepare to escort Sidney and her roommate Hallie out of town, Mickey strikes, killing both cops and eventually Hallie while Sidney runs back to campus. She sees the theater lit up and inside discovers Derek tied to a prop as a fraternity prank, and before she can untie him, Mickey steps in, revealing himself while casting enough doubt on Derek so that Sidney backs away, allowing Mickey to shoot him. Mickey reveals the whole plot to Sidney, how he's going to blame the movies, have a rockin' trial, etc. And then Mrs. Loomis shows up holding Gail at gunpoint, revealing her motive, revenge. Mrs. Loomis shoots Mickey because she can pin all this on him and get away with it with her alibi. And in the melee, Mickey gets off a round and drops Gail into the orchestra pit. Just as Mrs. Loomis goes in for the kill, Sidney turns the tables and a boatload of theater special effects on her as Mrs. Loomis finally regains the upper hand, holding Sidney by the throat with a knife. That's when Cotton Weary, who's been skulking around looking for his 15 minutes of retribution and fame, shows up with a gun, and after a brief standoff, shoots Mrs. Loomis. Turns out Gail survived the gunshot, and she and Sidney unload a pair of Glocks into Mickey, who make a last gasp effort to kill them all. In the end, Dewey is shown alive somehow, headed for an ambulance where Gail passes on a story while she's also somehow still alive to go be with him. Sydney sends the hounding press to Cotton Weary, whom she calls the hero, and she walks into a crowded campus, finally able to get away from it all as really awful late 90s music begins to play and the credits roll. And that is the, I guess, alternate plot summary of what actually goes down in Scream 2.
It's crazy.
Well, we talked
messed up.
We talked about last time that the last movie, if it owed any, thing, it owed itself to anything besides previous horror movies and a lot of things. Halloween was the big influence, and I get that Friday the 13th is the influence on this one. Do you guys feel that, Ron? Particularly you, as you and I reviewed that series.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, it's the instead of going about Friday the 13th Part 2, this is Friday the 13th Part 1, because you've got the mother getting revenge on a bunch of teenagers for killing her son, right down to the mother displaying superhuman strength for a 40-year-old, 100-pound lady.
Exactly. So we'll get there. You nailed it though, Brian. You knew that, the reverse of the Friday the 13th, but it's the oldest motive in the book, right? Revenge, right? Why else do anything? So, as a plot contrivance, it makes sense. I mean, this is part of what Williamson, when he was selling off the Scream script, which at the time was Scary Movie, he turned in a 5-page treatment for, and if you do a sequel to it, here's what it would be. And it was basically the shell of this. It was Billy's mother coming back to wreak more havoc. And that was the thing. And so they kept that and went with it. And, this is the first movie I remember someone telling me that the internet had caused it to change itself when it was all said and done, because the ending of this got leaked out, and it was going to be, Mrs. Loomis was always involved, but it was going to be Hallie and Derek as the killers, and Cotton Weary was going to be a killer. There were going to be 4 because it was double the fun. And they ended up changing that when that hit the internet, and that's when they moved it to Timothy Olyphant. And there's actually part of the movie that was shot with the other people in mind as the killers. And if you watch it knowing that, I think you can kind of see them leaning toward that in different scenes. But they did change it at the end, and we got what we got. We got a longer movie this time, too. You go longer on the sequel, that's not something I see a lot of. Most of the time, you want to get in and get out quicker, right? Like, you don't want to belabor the point.
I'm trying to think how Friday the 13th, or Nightmare 2 was compared to Nightmare 1. Because I remember Nightmare 1 being quick, and Nightmare 2 seeming like it took forever.
I don't know the runtime on those, if they're any different, but yeah, I remember you talking about that it felt longer. When a movie's bad, it can feel long too, but this movie is actually 2 hours. For a horror movie, that's a long, unless you're Rob Zombie, that's a long time. You got to admit. Especially for 1997. Nobody was doing that.
I don't know of a lot of, movies, period, that were 2 hours in 1997.
Yeah, I mean, that seems to be something that has come along in the Marvel age, the Marvelization of Hollywood, shall we say, where all the superhero movies now all have to be 3 hours long or something like that.
Thank you, Dances with Wolves.
Is that who we're going to blame that on? We're going to blame that on Costner?
That was the first 3-hour flipping movie that I remember.
Oh, goodness, no, man. There were plenty more before that. So that's the first one you remember.
But the ones before that always had an intermission, so you could get up and get some more popcorn to make it through the 4 hours.
Exactly.
The mill.
30s.
Well, unpopular opinion here. Dances with Wolves could have been an hour and a half long, and it would have been fine. So
I don't think that's very unpopular.
But
I think even Kevin Costner agrees with you on that one.
Which is funny because
that's why he went and did Waterworld.
It lasts for 5 hours, and no, that's The Postman. So, which if you can get to the first 2 hours, that was actually a good movie. Kevin Costner's like the modern Michael Cimino, except he never had to pay for his cinema sins. So anyway, or maybe he has, but we've gotten off track. Scream 2 to me though starts out trying to redo literally stuff from the first movie. We get the premiere at the theater, and they're going to see the adaptation of what happened last time. So we're going to see like the scenes again, but we get this like total Kevin Williamson verbal essay on like black cinema in Hollywood and horror movies, right? Which now is a joke, right? The black guy gets killed first. Nobody was saying that in the 90s. Like that was something different. And you put these two aspiring black actors on the screen. People, I knew who both of these people were at the time, and you off them in the first 5 minutes, because that's what we expect in this movie. But after they've had this whole diatribe about how ridiculous all this white shit is, which is funny, and then they get killed by it. Like it's like that. But see, the difference is the Drew Barrymore kill from last time, we didn't expect it, and it jolted you into the movie. This time I go in knowing something like that's probably going to happen, and I don't there's no fear induced in any of this, except for when he puts his ear on the bathroom wall. That probably didn't end well health-wise for him. But, I mean, really.
Tell me, why do you think he put his ear on the wall? What was he hearing?
Go ahead.
He was hearing weird, like, mumbling sounds. Like,
I don't know. It
somebody
looked like
talking
he thought
about, like, somebody, like a child whispering about mommy.
It's Timothy Olyphant's voice. It's Timothy Olyphant's voice going, "Should I do it, mommy? Should I do it, mommy?" And like he's doing this whole, mommy killer. Do I kill him now? And my whole thing was like, how does he know the dude is next to the wall? Is he like peering over? And I mean, how do you know, brother? I mean, he's looking down at the feet and going, well, he's got to
watching the feet.
He's got to be close enough. I mean, I guess so. Yeah, I wondered that forever.
It gets it right on too.
Yeah, I mean,
maybe he's got a little mirror up there he can see.
Well, gosh, public bathrooms are already scary enough, Brian. Thanks. So, but I mean, really, like I was like, is he just going to wait for him to walk out of the stall and slash him? I mean, there's a lot of ways he could have killed him, but to kill him the way he does, it's friggin' brutal. I mean, he stabs him in the ear with that hunting knife, which is amazing.
Yeah, it looked pretty nasty, and I thought he was going to escape a little bit and get out and start running, but it kind of teased like he was going to run out of the bathroom and get up and go, and then he just kind of plopped over dead. But
yeah, you get stabbed in the brain. I don't think you last long after that. So in fact,
you never know.
I'm sure he would have just dropped, but. But it is a gory scene. But it's set up into the thing we've seen 100 times in horror movies. The girl is sitting by the killer, and she doesn't know she's by the killer, right? And all of this stuff. And then, boy, Jada gets it bad. Like, she gets cut up.
And right there in public, because everybody is dressed as Ghostface, and everybody is stabbing people with their fake glowing knives, so everyone thinks it's part of the show.
Have either of you ever been to a film premiere where there was like costuming going on and like wild antics at the same time?
I typically avoid that, but I will admit I did go see The Force Awakens on opening night, and luckily I went in a small town where there were a bunch of people, but only like a handful of them even dressed up.
When I saw, when me and my wife went to see The Hobbit, we got tickets to a preview screening, basically, like a critic preview. And there were people who showed up. There were two spectacularly drunk girls who showed up dressed like slutty elves. One of whom threw up during one of whom passed out before the movie started, then woke up during a nice quiet part where, Bilbo was talking to throw up, and then her and her drunk friend had to be escorted out by security, which was
theater
a lot of fun.
Security.
Yeah, because neither one of them was really going to be able to walk out. One of them for sure.
Wow.
Yeah, so that was pretty awesome. And I've been to like midnight movies, like Rocky Horror Picture Show, and I've seen The Room, and people dress up for that and throw things and yell at the screen. But that was the Hobbit was the only time, like in a legitimate movie situation, where that kind of stuff happened.
I was gonna say, like when you go to The Room.
Hold on, Ron, you just blew my mind. They play The Room in theaters.
Oh yeah.
And people pay to see it?
Yes, people pay to see it. They pay to
Holy
yell
shit.
insults at the screen. They pay to sing the Full House theme song and all the tracking shots across the Golden Gate Bridge. They pay for to dress in tuxedos and throw footballs around. They pay to throw spoons at the screen every time a spoon shows up in the artwork of on Tommy Wiseau's weird set.
Huh.
Yeah,
My mind is blown.
I
Wow.
recommend it.
Wow. So I've never had that experience, or the like heavy costume experience. I've gone to like big crowds on opening weekend and like somewhat raucous crowd, watching a movie or whatever, but never one where I've was like distracted by the amount of like fake stabbing going on while Heather Graham is being menaced on the screen, like it. I've never seen anything like that. So when I saw this in theaters, I just was imagining to myself, and Ron, you know where I'm talking about here, like that would never happen in Florence. Like where I'm from, like that would never go down. Like nobody would. First, you'd probably get beat by somebody in the crowd, and two, like nobody would do this. And this is what's amazing to me about this movie is these aren't just random people killed in Hollywood. This middle of like in the small town, middle Ohio, gets a premiere of Stab.
Well, it can't be that small. They're at a college.
Well, no, college towns can be really small. And the one I live in is, if it weren't for the college, would be incredibly small. I've worked in ones before. And like when you read about this on all the Scream stuff, it's supposed to be that Randy and Sydney both went to like the smallest, like middle of nowhere in America school they could find to get away from all of the Woodsboro murders crap. Because that's one thing I think this movie's smart for, is that we are not a year later, it's 2 years later. When they're out of high school now, because none of these actors look like they're in high school. I mean, at all. Timothy Olyphant's at least like 30, at this point. Jada looks like she's, definitely the supervisor at work, not the coworker. She's not a student. None of these people are student age. So they're wise to move it to college. Plus you give them more freedom that way and you don't have to deal with adults. And it's a smart move. Y'all want to get far away. So I'm thinking about like this small middle America town, and they get a premiere of Stab. First off, like
this. Wait. This is supposed to be 2 years after the events of Scream, right?
Correct. So this is their freshman year. Yeah.
How quickly did Gale get that book written, and how quickly did it get made into Stab?
Well, see, this is Stab's premiere. So my thought was she got the book written and optioned it off before she wrote it. Now that is not unheard of. Like,
for sure,
like John Grisham, like hadn't even written The Client and sold it. He just had the treatment, like the idea. It was like 2 sentences, and they bought the movie rights for it. So I'm not actually totally surprised by that, because if something like this scandalous happened and it was a big news deal, I could see somebody going to the person that was writing the book and going, hey, we want the movie deal. And, of course, Gail is nothing but a sellout, if anything, in life. So,
big time,
so she's going to totally go for it, right? She sold the things off quick. And they even go as far to say it's just kind of based on it. And when you come to find out is that the book isn't exactly accurate, the film is even less accurate, and moreover, there are things in the film and in the book that Gail wasn't around to see. So the only way she knows half of what's there is because Sydney told her. And my question is, Sydney and her dad must have some really crappy lawyers, because otherwise they'd be set up on this, right?
Well, they got there was a lot of stuff that changed from what happened in Scream 1, but a lot of the dialogue they actually got spot on, which is weird.
Exactly, because again, Gail wasn't there for 2/3 of it. So how is she going to get that? She has someone
or was
else.
she?
Well, see, that's the thing. That's what I wondered. I was like, are they trying to tell me Gail's the killer? And from everything I read, you guys tell me if it's different. At no point was Gail going to be the killer in this film. So it's one of those, like, you just have to accept it for what it is. But since it's such a big part of the plot, I nitpick it because it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, I mean, that was what drove me nuts. Is I'm watching this, I'm like, well, how do they know the words that were spoken to Drew Barrymore's character before Casey died, right?
Yeah.
They're getting some of that dialogue spot on.
Yeah, which is funny because let's face it, like, the only thing I can think of there is that Billy and Stu used an MO, like, do you like scary movies? What's your name? And stuff like that. Because the only people that know that conversation, all three of them are dead. One got killed by TV, one got stabbed and shot, and the other one got gutted. So that nobody knows that conversation. And this is where I start to realize that, just like I did way back when, and every time I watch this movie, that I'm already having a problem. Because if I'm asking these questions, then I'm not engaging with this movie. I'm completely tearing it apart. And I'm going to blame the film itself for this. Because when you decide you want to be this meta, ironic thing, you now ask me to sort of step outside of my usual viewing self to enjoy this. And so I'm looking for the hidden references, the inside joke, right? And when you peel back the onion on this, you realize that it's kind of a paper mache outside. There's not a lot in the middle. It's the same thing again.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that. I was asking myself the same type of questions as I was watching this movie. Like, how does Gale know this, and how does Gale know that, and whatnot? And so it was kind of, it was taking me away from it as well. So I'm with you on that.
I mean, mostly I was asking myself how old specific people are on screen. That took up most of my brain power while watching the movie. I was like, okay, so Timothy Olyphant's supposed to be in college, but him and Liev Schreiber are basically the same age. So is Liev Schreiber supposed to be in college too?
No, see,
because it looks like he's 40.
See, I always knew Cotton was like an older, ne'er-do-well around town or whatever, or layabout or whatever. But I'm like, is Timothy Olyphant like it's not that kind of college? I'm like, he's not a peer of these people. He would be the older brother buying you beer, So
well, I like the backstory that we came up for Timothy Olyphant before we started recording. Jay,
go with it.
Yes, our theory is that Timothy Olyphant's character, whose name I forget already, Mickey, is there at college on the GI Bill, and he's crazy because he's got PTSD from fighting in Gulf War I.
Wow. I can go with it, though, if not for one line where he specifically says, had to have a backer, tuition's expensive, where he's doing his best Stephen Jeffries from Fright Night impression on that stage. And that's when he brings out Mrs. Loomis, Laurie Metcalf, who I can only assume they drug off the set of Roseanne to do this. Like, I have no idea why in the world why they thought her for this. I guess because she doesn't look like someone that could throw Buffy off of a building, but that's what she does.
Did you get the feeling that it was kind of going to be obvious that it was her from the get-go, with her like trying to one-up Gale all the time in the news stuff?
I think she is the obvious one, and I don't think the movie even holds that back. I think the twist is, who's the other one? Who are the accomplices? Because it totally makes sense, right? I mean, she's always trying to one-up Gale, and she's always freaking there. And she's some local news. We don't know who she is, so we have no there's nobody else that verifies her credentials. So we have no one to go, oh gosh, that's Debbie Salt. She did the rainwater story 2 years ago or whatever.
Right.
Yeah. So nobody knows who she is. The fact that she's always around, I'm like, well, clearly that's somehow or another she's involved in this. I never did think the Mrs. Loomis thing until they revealed that. I thought, oh, okay, I wasn't expecting that, but okay, but. It's who the other killer is that we're supposed to be obsessed with, and that you can play a fun little whodunit on it. And again, knowing what I said about the film earlier, you can see how they're casting doubt on several people.
Oh, and they should. That's what a good movie would be. So that's not a surprise. But yeah, I like how they tried to make it out to be the boyfriend again.
Derek, Jerry O'Connell, maybe like the vanilla wafer of white 90s actors, wouldn't you say? Guys, I mean, just about as plain as you can get. He was good in Jerry Maguire, playing a douchebag draft prospect.
No, I disagree. I like Jerry O'Connell.
Okay, tell me why, besides being the fat guy in Stand By Me.
Well,
wasn't he a Teen Wolf too?
No, that's Jason
Teen Wolf
Bateman.
2 was Jason
they
Bateman.
look the same.
Kind of. I was a big fan of Sliders, so I'm already on Team Jerry O'Connell. I think when he showed up on screen, I excitedly yelled, "Hey, it's Jerry O'Connell!"
Speaking of which, wasn't Joshua Jackson in Sliders too?
I don't think so.
Okay, he's in some
but
other type.
But I couldn't pick
thing.
Joshua Jackson out of the lineup if you held a gun to my head.
Well, he's one of the kids in the film class with comedian Craig Shoemaker, by the way, which is hilarious. If you've ever seen Shoemaker's, he's the professor here doing his stand up about it. But he's one of the kids there, and he's on the set because at the same time this is happening, Williamson is getting Dawson's Creek, together, and that is going to premiere like in January of '98. So he just grabbed him for a day and said, "Hey, come over here and just read some lines," because as it were, this great scene in the classroom where we have everybody debating, good sequel versus bad sequel and all this kind of stuff. That's where we're supposed to know that it's Mickey because he's the one like touting that sequels can be equal because he's basically making a sequel, though they're really not. And I want to talk about one of the other things they just dropped from this movie here too. Okay. So, and I'm going to fast forward ahead or just skip around here a little bit. So we know that the two people get killed at the theater, right? Phil and Maureen are their names. We didn't know that otherwise until people told us. So there's that. And then everybody's partying over at Lambda, Camda, Famda, whatever. Anyway, so after Cece gets killed, because this is what happens. Everybody's partying across the street. She is sober sister. So she's hanging out, flipping channels, watching Kung Fu, talking to Selma Blair as we're on the phone. And she thinks her drunk boyfriend dials in because now we have call waiting. So, okay. So now we've already done the caller ID thing because the first gag is
graduated.
Yeah. The first gag is, Sydney gets a prank call and she's like, "Well, Mr. or whatever, it's against this certain law." And so he hangs up on her. So she's like, "Whatever." And then now we've got call waiting. So she flips over, and as it turns out, it's not Ted. No, we know this is Mrs. Loomis because Mickey is across the street talking about how much Ewoks blow, and he's drinking with, Portia Del Rossi or whatever. And so there's
part of a trilogy.
Yeah. And so, because him and Randy are having this whole discussion about sequels. And so anyway, I do like the quippy dialogue. It is funny. I'm not going to lie and say I don't laugh, but like there's nothing of consequence happening here. And this is what gets me because I'd always thought, well, they tried to start this movie just like the last one. Really, they don't. They do this whole commentary on the culture that the last one created, basically. And now this is when they're going to start the movie because this kill is identical to the Drew Barrymore kill, almost, except for the flaming popcorn. Like, it's a long conversation with a blonde girl in a place. She gets chased around. She beats the crap out of it for a minute. But then ultimately she gets stabbed and she gets thrown off of a building, by a 100-pound woman. Now, Sarah Michelle Gellar is no, beefy person herself or anything. But if you're trying to tell me Laurie Metcalf could kick her ass, no way. I know that was the get of having her on this was you're going to kill Buffy because that'll blow everybody's mind. But that is redonkulous, the way that whole thing goes down. It is, and only to be accented by that friggin' Everclear song. So, I mean, at the end of this movie is so 90s it hurts. I think that's what you texted me at some point in the middle of it, Ron.
Yeah, I said something about how great the soundtrack was.
And by great, you meant not, right? So,
because, wow. Come on, Everclear,
no.
the Foo Fighters, Dave Matthews Band.
Less than Jake.
How can it be?
I kind of enjoyed this soundtrack. I'm not gonna lie.
I'm not gonna lie that
Jake on your.
Yeah.
I mean, if you put Less Than Jake in your movie soundtrack, I'm gonna give it a thumbs up. It's fine. They need the money.
I'm not gonna lie that I don't own the cassette of it still, but it was for like 2 songs. One of which Brian railed on last time about how much he hated it. So
screw Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds.
It's only in like one scene, really. So they,
I think it's in 2.
They do ding it in when they're kind of zooming around campus when Gail shows up, right? So
it's in 2 in the first one, but it's only here once in the second one.
No, it's in the beginning, and then it plays in the background of another scene.
The thing about this, what I was getting at though, is you got this kill going on, and then we get this part in the police station, and this is like a thread that I can't find any documentation on why they dropped it, but they do this whole thing on a blackboard about how this guy's name corresponds with this person's name from the first one, and this girl's name is the same initials as this girl that got killed here, and Maureen is the same name as Maureen Prescott, and like they're doing this whole like it's a direct sequel, and I thought, how wicked elaborate is this going to be? We got to kill people with the same name in the same order.
I that scene I thought was intriguing, but did they ever circle back to it?
No, they drop it after that.
Exactly.
That's what I'm saying.
It was a cool thought, and then it was just gone.
I'm like, why would you drop that? If they had kept that up, as ridiculous as that is, that kind of machination would have at least made me interested. Because as you meet people, you start going, wait a minute, who are they? And who's the Tatum and all this kind of stuff. But they just drop it. Ron, do you have any idea why that just died on the vine?
I can only assume it's got something to do with the fact that this movie went into production and was writing on the fly. Because, as you said before, the script leaked out onto the internet, the 1997 internet. So I guess it was on alt.scream.
Hey, 1997, the internet was getting pretty big. So
you could load it. It would take an hour to load the page, but you could do it.
This was
I can only assume this was part of
college for me. So
the many rewrites that this movie underwent, and the fact that they were just kind of throwing pages at actors
shouldn't this
right
be
before
caught
they walked
in
on the
editing? Shouldn't they have caught it in editing?
They had like a 6-month turnaround to get this. They wanted this movie out by December, which was less than a year of the first one. So I don't know how much editing there actually was.
They wanted it like a week earlier than the first one premiered too. As a matter of fact, the initial get was to try to do Thanksgiving, and they just couldn't. There was no way they could pull that off. Because especially when they had to redo the ending, that whole sequels discussion in the classroom, by the way, not in the first cut of the film. They had to bring people back to shoot that, to do that, because they realized we just introduced Cece in the scene of her death, and they wanted her to be more established in there, and they wanted to have that whole sequels discussion going before. So that wasn't even in there. So from there, think about all the stuff they had to pick up and do.
2 sequels talks.
Yeah, exactly. So that there's 2 of them, and because
I'm guessing the Dewey and Randy sequels talk was originally the one they wanted to go with, and so then they brought them back to do the second one, and then didn't bother taking the Dewey and Randy one out.
Well, no, they wanted the Dewey and Randy one in there because that was the perfect layout for a trailer, and it was just supposed to be the trailer, and it ended up being such a good scene they left it. Because
I like the fact that they both dropped it after they were both possibly suspects.
Right. Yeah, they were like,
we won't discuss that.
If I'm a suspect, you're a suspect. I love Arquette's little fake, tough face there. He actually has one of the best scenes in the film, though, when he's going off on Gail about her book and how crappy she treated him, like Barney Fife or whatever. And he talks about how, that's just his way to manipulate himself into any situation. And I'm like, so I guess I'm supposed to think Dewey's manipulative enough to do this now? But from what I
think Dewey's really smart, not stupid.
From what I read, though, he was never a suspect, so I don't know. But neither he nor Randy. But
I can't see. Well, unless he's faking all of his injuries, how can he be the suspect?
Okay,
but if
if
he starts faking his injuries, then we're getting into scary movie territory. How Scary Movie ends with the ending of The Usual Suspects,
right? Exactly.
So is he gonna is David Arquette supposed to pull that little mustache off and drop his limp and then get into an Audi and
walk
drive away?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, from Screaming Chaz Palminteri.
What a great movie, by the way.
Until you said it, which we have reviewed, by the way, Kurt and I did in the archives on Filmstrip. Until you said it, though, I have never realized that Dewey is doing a Kaiser Soze limp and hand and walk this entire movie. That's exactly what David Arquette is doing. He's doing a Kevin Spacey, and
but he never comes out of it.
No, because he gets
But I'm
stabbed.
100% sure. I'm 100% sure that nobody involved in this production, at least not Wes Craven and Kevin Williamson, were even aware of what he was doing or why he was doing it. I guarantee you that was all David Arquette.
I'm sure they were. Yeah, I imagine the note was Dewey has a limp, and they just went with that. You know, and then he just kind of came to set and did that thing. By the way, that's his dad as the sheriff. So looked much more like his dead sibling, if you ever Lexus, but in the eyes especially. But anyway, that's Louis Arquette. But no, I mean the things that are happening in this movie though, you have the death of Cece, and then while all that happens, we have to chase Sydney through the house, and that's supposed to throw some kind of shade on Derek, right? Because he gets cut across the arm, and I love how, knowing that Mickey is the killer and is the one who probably did that after everybody dispersed and stuff, he's the one like, look at Derek, he barely got a scratch, and that other girl got torn to pieces or whatever, and like he's trying to talk the shade, and
then you're a medical student, you would know how to cut yourself.
Yeah, just where you wouldn't be hurt, right? And it also lends credence to your theory, Ron, that this is an ex-war vet that knows about injuries and things. So you just turned like this. It's like American Sniper becomes a psycho on a college campus, man. You've totally reimagined this film for me now. That's a great moment.
It's now a much better movie.
Actually, if you had told me this before I rewatched it this time, I probably would have been more favorable toward it. Yes. So now he's sympathetic. Darn it. So. Not to mention, I will say this, though. Like, I think Arquette really is doing a good job playing Dewey here. I think he really is playing along and having fun. Jamie Kennedy is doing the same thing he did last time. He's just more coked up, maybe, or something, or at least acting like he is. But I will tell y'all both, I didn't realize that was the same guy. I thought for years that they had replaced Randy with, like, some, other dude from Hollywood. And then a friend of mine was like, no, man, it's the same dude. I'm like, no way. And I had to go look it up. And
I'm surprised you didn't know.
I didn't follow it
right away.
I didn't follow it. He looks so different than the first movie. Am I crazy?
Looks thinner. That's all.
Is that it? I mean, he was kind of skinny the first time.
He looks a lot thinner. I think the beard has something to do with it.
Maybe it is the face. Yeah. Maybe it is the face, but I don't know. We'll go ahead and skip there. We're jumping all around on this thing. What did y'all make of Randy getting it in the van the way he did?
I hated it, actually. I thought he should survive for number 3 because he's kind of the guy who gives you the rules every time, and I think that's kind of a cool character to have. So having him get slaughtered, I thought was kind of stupid.
Yeah, that was really disappointing to me, too, because I really liked Randy as a character, and I even kind of liked Jamie Kennedy's performance, even in this one. And I don't know, it just feels like maybe Jamie Kennedy was hard to work with, and they wanted to just get rid of him.
I'm wondering. I don't know. Part of me thinks when Mickey wasn't the other killer, that they were setting up that character to be the new Randy, because he is a film student, he's a geek and stuff, but he doesn't have any connection to these people other than he has a class with Randy and he hangs out in the same circles, all of which can be explained by the fact that he's trying to kill them. So there's no way he would have ever been a substitute. So I sort of dismissed that. I think they wanted to shock us and get us to think that anybody could die. Because later when Dewey gets stabbed again, you think, well, that's got to be it for him, right? Like, you don't get struck by lightning twice, right?
Yeah. So they made it look like he was pretty much toasted. I mean
holy cow,
he got stabbed how many times?
Yeah.
And I hate the excuse that they give at the end for how he survived.
You mean the ADR line that they threw in that no one... That you don't see anyone say?
Luckily, he had some scar tissue.
Yeah, because that's probably because the test audience said, how the hell is that guy still alive? He's a marshmallow anyway as a human being, and he's already like half a person. And then you just cut him to bits in front of that woman. He got stabbed in the first one. He got stabbed in the back. He fell out of the door, and the guy pulled the knife out. Stu pulled the knife out of him. And that was it. There's nothing more to it. I'm like, Mrs. Loomis cuts him to ribbons. You can hear the sound of it. She just toasts him.
Apparently all she hit was scar tissue.
I have a lot of scar tissue. I'm not sure it can save me from anything like that.
Yeah, do you want to try stabbing yourself in it and see if it works? I'm guessing not.
I'm going to say no. I mean,
okay, yeah, probably wise.
I got some really bad poison ivy on a really good scar I have on my leg once, though, and it did change the way the scar looks. but it didn't prevent me from like not having poison ivy.
I would imagine not.
Are the knives in this movie much louder than the knives in the first movie?
I think.
Or is that just me?
You talking about the swing sound, as I call it?
Yeah, these knives make noise like those Nerf footballs that have the whistle in them, where you throw the football and it shrieks.
Yeah.
Like these knives must have like noisemakers inside to make them swish and clatter against nothing.
Remember what Randy said though? It's always bigger in the sequel, and I think they are like making fun of that, and at the same time doing it. You know, like yes, we're going to make fun of all the tropes of sequels, and then we're going to do all of them, while trying to deliver the same thematic element you liked last time, while making you suck on member berries as we stab you. So I mean, that's what this whole movie's built off of. I feel like. And the problem with it is last time we got to know the characters. We liked them. This time we're thrown in with people that we recognize, but they're up against other people that we don't care about at all. And this is the thing I was going to with the Cece kill. That elaborate scene, which goes on for 10 minutes or so, amounts to nothing. It means nothing. None of them knew her. None of them talk about, oh gosh, I'm going to really miss Cece. Like nothing. There's nothing about that matters other than to just have another kill and to maybe prove to us that there's more than one killer at that point. That does nothing thematically at all. And that's when I realized these people think they know everything about sequels, but they have no idea what really makes one work, because there are things that happen that don't do anything for the whole rest of the plot. It doesn't make any difference that Sarah Michelle Gellar gets stabbed and thrown off of that building. Like it doesn't matter at all. And it's just ridiculous.
Is she a big star at this point? Like is Buffy a big hit at this point? Or?
At this point, yeah. But people knew Buffy. It was a big thing, and it was a neat thing to get her to do this. And to do that, I Know What You Did Last Summer. And look, she was like any young actress at that point. You're going to throw a movie at her. She's a TV actress. She's going to take it, especially one that's coming off one of the biggest horror films of all time. That shoot, yeah, that's at that point. You got to remember too, she worked for Fox, and that's all tied in some hoary way with the Weinsteins at that point in Miramax and everything. So I'm sure they said, "Hey, it'll get a huge bump for the TV show if you go do this." So, I mean, yeah, she would have been a known quantity.
Is her kill supposed to be another echo of the Drew Barrymore kill in the first movie?
Yeah,
it's supposed to be exactly that kill. Yes,
because
did that kill make any difference?
Yeah,
I mean,
because Casey had dated Stu. So
okay,
yeah, that's the difference.
Yeah, so there was
I'm glad you pointed
reason.
that.
All right,
I'm glad you pointed that out. Yes, that is the biggest difference. There was a connection between those two people. Now the boyfriend is still the useless one in that whole scene, and they never really talk about him. But Casey had dated Stu, and so that mattered. Cece, as far as we know, didn't even know these people. Like she didn't know who any of these people were. She had a class with anotde girl, and she had a class with Randy,
Randy,
and he didn't even act like he knew who she was when she was talking to him. So whoop-de-doo.
But
yeah.
it's just another point too. I think that this movie is really you can tell that this movie was written on the fly, because you've already got a cold open kill where you kill off Major League 2 and Jason's Lyric. They were both, Omar Epps and Jada Pinkett were both fairly big stars at this point, because I mean she'd done had been on A Different World. She'd been in Menace to Society.
That's a great movie, by the way.
She'd been in the awesome Tales from the Crypt Demon Knight,
which we have also reviewed, available in the archive.
And I mean, Omar Epps was on ER.
Yeah. So,
and he's been in Higher Learning and The Program, which I remember from my high school days because some idiot laid down in the road like they do in The Program and got murdered.
Yeah, you can't find that version of the film anymore, by the way. You have to go to the dark end of the internet to see that scene. But yeah, I remember that. So. I
mean, so it's like they didn't realize they'd already done this with Jada Pinkett and Omar Epps, and they decided, well, we got to do it again because people expect it. So they just recreated Drew Barrymore, this time with Sarah Michelle Gellar.
And see, that's the thing that I feel like someone told Williamson, hey, you need, we need a star we can kill in the middle here, and we need a blonde white girl we can kill here, almost specifically. And he's like, well, I kill these people in the beginning. And then I think he even looked at it, because he's the one that came up with this, and I think he looked at it and said, well, that opening is really sort of my treatise on, the irony of black actors in horror movies, and wouldn't it be funny if they have two of them fussing about it and then you kill them, and I want to kind of riff on Sandra Bullock, and, it was just him doing his dialogue heavy thing that he likes to do. And then they're like, well, we need to recreate the tension of that, because also if Cece is not killed right there, by the way, nothing is happening for 30 minutes in this movie. So much like the Principal Hembry kill, which was thrown into, we gotta whack somebody else here in the middle. I think they were like, we gotta kill somebody, and we got Sarah over here said she would do this, and she probably was there for 3 days. It should have been shot.
It should have been Tom Bosley.
Yeah, maybe he was picking up a hefty trash bag outside. He was like the janitor at the school. That would have worked.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you've already killed the principal of the high school. Why not kill the college janitor? That's basically the same thing.
Either that, or you have Ron Howard as the history professor. He could have been the film professor, for goodness sakes. I guess they didn't want to pay him. Well,
then you could have got Clint Howard, and nobody would have known the difference.
He was probably doing one of those Silent Night, Deadly Night sequels at the point, or something like that. But anyway, talking about
telling me they couldn't pry him away from the set of The Ice Cream Man.
Hey man, the man's got priorities, okay? So he's hard to get. But I think we're proving the point here, though, is that there's so little of anything of interest that happens until this movie hits the third act. And when Randy gets killed, I'm with you, Brian. I was mad. I wanted him to hang around. And I don't necessarily enjoy Jamie Kennedy's work, but I do think he's good in this role, and I think he was really good for this film. And when they off him that way, I was really disappointed. I was like, well, now I don't have anybody I want to listen to talk anymore, because they've done something to Gale Weathers here, and I don't know if it's those freaking weird red highlights or something in the Courtney Cox looks so pissed off and stressed out, and she's screaming half the time. I just don't like her in this movie. I liked her in the last one, but I just don't dig her in this movie at all. And so I don't want to listen to her. Dewey's, a little bit of him goes a long way. We're not going to spend any time on Sydney anymore, because all she can do is stand there and cry and look helpless in front of Derek. Which, can we talk about the singing scene at the lunchroom where he breaks out the...
No, please don't.
Oh, okay. You're the musician of the three of us here, Brian. So go ahead and critique his, I Think I Love You.
I'm not the only one, sir.
You're the only one that's still practicing, so...
Well, I'm trying to get you, but anyway. Yeah, it was horrible. And I think it was horrible just like Tom Cruise's was horrible. So, hey, I guess they just wanted to recreate stupidity, and they
wait a minute.
Succeeded.
Are you talking about Tom Cruise in Top Gun or Rock of Ages?
Does it matter?
It kind of
both movies are terrible.
It truly is. Top Gun is not terrible, though, sir.
Yes, it's terrible.
Okay, to be settled on another day. So, so we have that because I think we're supposed to finally let Derek off the hook, but we're going to put him back on it almost literally at the end once again. But that's supposed to be this big show of love, and he gives her his Greek letters necklace, which is supposed to be some kind of a... Man, I don't know about where you guys went to college. The Greek dudes mostly had tattoos of their letters, and they didn't have anything to give any. But that was a high school thing, to give your girlfriend your letter jacket or your ring or something. None of the dudes I went to college with they weren't giving anything necessarily metal and tangible to the girls they dated. Most likely in the bacterial form.
I was going to say, do roofies count as a gift?
Well,
syphilis.
I'm just going to let all that go.
Crabs.
So you guys are putting actual words to what I was thinking. So there we go. Now we're all there. And
can we talk too about the scene where Randy gets it?
Yeah.
Can we talk about the technology change in 1 year's time?
Please.
In the previous film, we had a computer with Windows 95 dialing a 911 call,
right,
and then handheld phones, which were fairly new at the time. We are now graduated to cell phones in 1 year's time. and this is true because obviously true because they put it in the movie. But I remember in '96-ish, I was running around with a pager.
Were you dealing dope?
1990. No, and everyone had a pager, dude.
I know.
In 1997, I got my first cell phone.
Wow.
Because I worked for a company that sold them.
Right.
So how cool is that? That we've all of a sudden everyone on campus has cell phones.
Hey, look at that cell phone too. That flip phone that Gail's running around with. That thing weighed at least 4 pounds and would get up to at least 85 degrees when it was in operation.
I had a Sprint flip phone from Motorola. Oh god, what a pile of shit that was.
Well, but you know what?
See, that's why I never realized that this was in Ohio until you said that. I always assumed this was California because there were so many 1996 cell phones.
You know, it's because it's shot in California. The only reason I know that, by the way, is through painstakingly digging through the Scream Wikia page, and it's saying if you look at the cop cars and their license plates, they all say Ohio. And so, like, you see that, and it's like, okay. And this is supposed to be like a small liberal arts college in Ohio. It's not supposed to be a big place because, again, these people would go to a small place to get away from it all, which I kind of get.
And it should be obvious because Gail Withers isn't going to go to California to be around Sidney Prescott. I mean,
she's there.
Seriously.
she's still in L.A.
It's Ohio.
Yeah,
it's Ohio.
And, you know.
And Cotton Weary is not going to travel there either.
Okay, we got to talk about him. Cotton Weary, Liev Schreiber. Now, in the first movie, he's barely a cameo on a TV screen somewhere, right? I didn't even know that was him until years later. I was like, oh, he actually was in the first one. Okay. And at this point, like, he's somebody, right? Like, people know him from stuff. Not like maybe they do now, but he comes back to do this, and all he does is walk around waiting for his, like, what does he think he's going to get? A big payday out of a 2020 type interview? From what I understand, those weren't like, you didn't get like
$1,000, man.
I mean, is that
each
good? I don't know.
I mean, isn't $10,000
in prison?
Isn't $10,000 in 1996 like $1 million these days? Is that what we're led to believe?
I don't know.
We haven't gotten that much inflation.
Yeah, it's not that bad, bro. But you're not far off. So, I mean, it's huge. But I mean, really though, I'm like, is this really that big of a? I guess it is. I mean, I get it though from his character's point of view. He wants retribution.
He's been ruined.
Yeah.
He's been ruined. I mean, who's going to hire him to work for them? He's been accused of murder. Even if he was proved to be innocent, there's still that shadow of doubt in many people's minds. I mean, look at all this anti-vax stuff, right? It's been proven that the guy who said that vaccinations cause autism is completely a complete liar, but still people cling to that, right?
Right.
So there's people who probably think Cotton Weary is guilty still, and so they're not going to hire him. So he's looking for any way to get money.
Can I tell you what I think this is a riff on though? Because Randy drops it in his serial killer Hall of Fame thing that he's laying out for the Ghostface killer on the phone. I think this is a riff on O.J. Simpson. That was still a thing at the time, and making fun of that and calling O.J. the killer in 1997 was not something that happened like regularly. And I think Williamson dialed that up heavy with the Cotton Weary. It's like, well, if he's innocent, I guess what would it be like to be OJ, or whatever, out there trying to find the real killers? And they have a good scene in the police department after the party scare and stuff where they're grilling. Oh no, he like gets in front of Sid at a library and talks trash to her or something before the two maybe gay, maybe not gay cops beat him up. And they have that whole thing about like, he's like, I'm innocent, you have to let me go. And he's like being so sincere and earnest. And I'm like, did nobody tell Liev what kind of movie he was in, man? Because he's giving this way more than it deserves.
Well, I'm sure he's doing that to get another part sometime down the road, right? Make yourself look good.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think... I'm going to disagree that he was like a thing.
Really?
At this point. Yeah, because...
Okay.
I mean, it's not like he... I mean, what had he been in, like, to make him noteworthy?
Well, that's what I'm asking. Like, I know I've seen him in a lot of stuff. I don't know how far back it goes. Like, I know this is before he did the X-Men Origins thing. It's before he did something like Sphere, which was a big deal at the time. It wasn't a good movie, but it was a big deal to be in it. And I mean, he was a big theater guy too, so maybe he hadn't really done TV and film a lot at this point. But
he hasn't done a whole lot of well-known stuff. The biggest thing he did was he was in Mixed Nuts in 1994, but that's not known for him.
No,
but he's great in Mixed Nuts though.
By the third one, he is a big deal. We'll talk about that next time. So, because that getting him back was a thing at that moment. But another topic for another day. But as far as the character Cotton, the original script again is that Mrs. Loomis has been working in construct with Hallie and Derek to do this, terrorism to Sydney, and it's almost in the movie, but you can tell that it's been cut out because he has this one line at the end where he's like, "You're not from channel whatever." To her, she is supposed to be the reporter that has drug him there, and has made like this big deal to him, and she figured if I can just get him close enough, he will snap on her and he'll help me kill her too. And he becomes a killer at the end before Sydney has to kill them all. And I wanted to ask you guys, like, what would you have thought of that if they brought him back and actually made him part of the Quadro of Terror, as it were?
I don't think I would have cared for it. I don't think that would have fit.
Yeah, it would have fit with Mrs. Loomis's revenge trip, because he would want revenge for that year he spent in jail and the defamation of his good name. But I don't think someone having been so recently released from prison would be anxious to go back to prison.
And I gotta say, the only way that works is if he actually did kill the mom in the first place and was part of a trio who actually went to jail for the other two. And it just doesn't work for me.
That's an excellent point, and probably among other reasons why they dropped it. I mean, besides the leak on the internet, but I don't know that it would have worked either, because I kind of like the idea that Cotton is this sort of put upon guy who was in the wrong place at the wrong time, got framed, and now is trying to put his life back together. And I thought, how hard would that be? And I remembered back to a friend of mine from high school who, when we, after we were out of high school, had got accused of along with a couple of other guys, of a horrible crime that they had nothing to do with, and it took him years to rebuild any kind of a reputation. In fact, he built a career and a life outside of the state that we grew up in, because he couldn't get anybody to look at him and not remember, this horrible thing that he had nothing to do with.
Yeah. And I think that's exactly what to my point before, is that Cotton is trying to get money any way he can. If by selling his story to some news people to get a few $1,000s is what he has to do, it's what he's going to do. Plus, he wants the fame, but he's not going to get hired anywhere near that town.
No, like he has to be a celebrity now, because he can't do anything normal for a living anymore, right? Like there's no way he's like. And I like it too, because it does make him a more sympathetic character, I think. And it also makes him being a hero at the end stick and matter, because he does kill Mrs. Loomis, Debbie Salt. Sydney shoots her in the head while she's laying on the ground, but she doesn't make any move after he shoots her in the neck. Like he puts her down. And I also think that maybe he used the reel when he jumps on the stage and that little crouch or whatever, like that was his tryout for X-Men Origins Wolverine. Like he just showed him that and was like, hey, I can do this, So that was 10 years ago, guys. Come on. So, but anyway, no, I'm glad Cotton is not part of the killing here, but he is a good suspect. And I won't lie and tell you that the first time I saw this movie, I thought it's going to be Cotton. It's going to be Cotton and this news lady, because it makes it would work, and I'm glad they didn't do it. I always felt like Timothy Olyphant was too obvious, and that's only because Timothy Olyphant always looks like he's the evil twin of Clint Eastwood, or something like.
Nice.
And see, I was thinking that Liev Schreiber would be too obvious, because he just looks like he should be the murderer.
Right.
Yeah, and I think that would have been an obvious to put it on him, but it didn't make sense to me. Going through. Honestly, throughout this whole movie, I didn't even look at Mickey at all or care about his character to think he would be the killer. So when he turned out to be the killer, I was kind of like, okay.
Yeah, you talk about a guy that is a superhero, though. Now, Timothy Olyphant's a decently built guy. All right, he's pretty tall, and he can do stuff. Well, one more reason on why Cotton can't be this, and it made me think about it when I said that about Oliphant. Liev Schreiber's also a foot taller than everybody else on the set, so if he had that costume on, you'd know it. I mean, that's the other thing that should be the dead giveaway. But Oliphant, though, when the two cops are going to take Sydney and her roommate that we haven't talked about at all, Hallie, away to someplace or whatever, when he goes to kill them, like, he completely goes like Michael Myers superhero on that one cop and rips his throat out basically, and then dances on drives the car, runs over the other cop, survives that wreck. I mean, this guy's made out of steel or PCP.
That other cop took it pretty bad, man.
Well, he did. Yeah, well, they cut away from that too, but like there's like a Final Destination kill in the middle of that. It's pretty bad.
That looked awful. But yeah, I mean, he gets in that big wreck trying to get the cop off the car and gets knocked unconscious. Now, who thought that this Ghostface was going to wake up while the roommate was getting out?
I did.
I thought she was going to get stopped and then it was going to be a little struggle.
Yeah, that seemed
it would have been the perfect time to kill her, I think.
I mean, that would have made sense if they hadn't decided at the last minute not to make her one of the ghost faces. Well, like if they'd gone through with the plan to have the four of them kill her, it would have. That makes more sense than to have him wake up immediately after.
And then just have him come out and attack her anyway. Well, I think it would have been a lot cooler had he stopped her from getting out and took her down at that point.
This is supposed to mirror the Tatum death, the best friend death from the first movie. That's what Williamson says, at least.
Yeah, but it doesn't.
Well, I know that's the thing, though. But this is what he says, and I'm going to tear it apart here with you. He says this is supposed to mirror the Tatum death because the best friend is dead, and we wanted to kill her after we took her off the killer list. And I said, well, the problem with that is Sydney didn't know Tatum was dead until after it was over. Yeah, she didn't even know she was dead when you guys were talking all that trash in the kitchen. Like that's news. I'm like, she wasn't there for that. So is it supposed to be like worse on her because she sees it? I mean, she's seen a lot of people killed at this point. I don't think you can scar poor Sidney Prescott anymore.
Yeah, it doesn't mirror anything in my opinion, and in fact, I think it's kind of silly the way it goes down. Instead, she wants to go get a look at who it is. Yeah, well, duh, you had your chance and you missed it.
Hey, you know what? That didn't work out for Jamie Lee Curtis in Halloween Resurrection, which was many years later, but still the same idea. It just don't unmask the killer. It doesn't do you any. What do you expect? Who cares
right.
at that point? Mm-hmm. I want to talk about Sydney here for a minute, though, too, because we've skipped over a big part of her character in this movie, and it's part that I just cannot get on board with at any time. Why would a girl that was that traumatized by such a horrible event go into something as outward focused as theater and acting to like overcome all of that stuff? She doesn't play at all like the kind of people that would be doing Cassandra in Oedipus and all this stuff, besides all the referential part of it. Like I thought, like, she should have been writing the book with Gail, or something like that. Like, she would have been an English major. Like, this girl is not a theater major. Like, that Randy is a film major, makes total sense. Her as a theater major, it's a dumb idea.
Well, I think that she even points out that she's doing really well in theater until this resurfaces. So obviously she thinks this is all done, right? Everything's put to rest.
Well, yeah, why wouldn't
she finally
you?
Move on? So she goes into theater. Maybe that's a passion of hers. I guess we never really knew. But it doesn't come back to haunt her until all this shit starts happening up again.
No, you just hit it. It's something there was nothing in that first movie that would have even lent you to the idea that Sydney was into theater. Like, I don't it just seems to come out of nowhere. And look, I work in the field. I know people change their minds when they go to college, whatever. But this is not the kind of person that would do something like this. Ron, you weigh in on this. What do you think?
I mean, it does seem weird. I think the only reason she's a theater major is so we can have that finale in on the stage where Sydney knows what ropes to cut to drop the hot lights and how to use that Frankenstein laboratory looking console to trigger all the special effects and whatnot. I think that's the only reason that she is a drama major. Because you're right.
Yeah.
I don't see why surviving, a murder attempt would make you the sort of person to want to be an actress, unless, of course, she's like tapping into her deep-seated emotional traumas and like doing like a Stella Adler thing.
Well, in that case, she would be going into psychology and doing therapy. That I could buy. I would totally believe that this horrible experience led her toward the helping profession. I could totally buy that. This doesn't make any sense, and I think it's one of those things that it exists only so we can have that set piece, so we can do that. And they have two big scenes with the theater. I mean, you have the one where she's talking to her professor, and then you have the rehearsal scene, and Ghostface just running around, and you're supposed to be wondering, is that her imagination, or is it Ghostface? It's obviously Ghostface. It's probably Mickey at that point, running around, screwing around, messing with her head.
I took it as her imagination.
It's actually him. Or it's actually Ghostface though, because there's a couple of in-cut scenes, but again, you read deep enough on the Wikia page, you find these things. You can actually see that an extra set of people walking away that weren't a part of the actors at some point. So it's an insert cut, but Craven stuck it in there because he wanted to make sure people realized, no, that's really Ghostface. So, he went out of his way to do that. They couldn't get the plot straight, but we got that shot in there. So,
I think I would have liked it better if it was her imagination.
That would have been fun if we didn't already have.
Then we
didn't already have evidence that this stuff is going on again, though. That's the problem. I
don't think so. I think it triggers that paranoia in her, and I think it would have worked very well to have her seeing things, especially in a scene where everyone's wearing a mask.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with Brian on that. I think that would have been a good, added just a little layer of unreliable narrator to her.
I'm going to only argue the counter to it is this. By not having it be that way for her, it actually solidifies all the time Sydney talks about being a survivor and a fighter and how strong she is and stuff like that. Because that's evidenced by the fact that she isn't losing her mind, and she does trust her gut, and she knows this is bad. Like she's her own Cassandra. She knows this is bad, and I like the fact that they don't fake it out on that. Again, too, because in the movie it would have made no sense because we know there's a killer. Like this, it would only work if that was the opening scene, and then you cut to the movie. Now that would have been interesting. That would have been kind of fun. Catch up with Sydney at college, and then, but we didn't do that.
I don't think it would have worked if you did it as the opening scene because she shouldn't be having those kind of hallucinations in the opening scene because it was all taken care of.
It would have worked,
but once it starts up again. Now she's screwed, right? She has to deal with it all over again.
Let me rewrite it and tell you how it would work. Is if you have her having that conversation with a counselor, whomever, about, well, the book's been out, 2 years now, and now the movie's coming out, and it's just bringing all this back up again. And she gets the prank call, so she could, we could even skip that, and she could just say, I get the calls. I'm thinking about all this junk again. I don't know if I can do this right now. And then he gets her in the whole, I don't believe you, and motivates her, and she's like, I'm a fighter. And then we cut to whatever else. That it would have worked in that way. Now that's not how the movie's done. You're right. So the way it exists now, it wouldn't matter. But I think there's a way it could have worked, but they weren't trying to make that kind of movie. They were trying to make a movie that riffed on sequels while being a sequel at the same time. So I guess we're at the end of the finale now, the showdown in the theater. And this is my favorite performance part for Timothy Olyphant. I already said he reminded me of Stephen Jeffries from Fright Night. Either one of you have any idea what I'm talking about there?
Nope.
Not at all.
If you've never seen the original Fright Night, you owe it to yourself to go watch it. There's an actor in it named Stephen Jeffries. He plays a character named Evil Ed, and he has basically the same haircut and the same like inflection Timothy Olyphant's doing at the end when he's talking all that trash to Sydney, except he's about a foot shorter and 100 pounds lighter. But he's like the geeky horror friend in the movie. You need to go see. I can't believe I'm talking to you two. Haven't seen Fright Night? I'm going to fix that. I know somebody's getting some DVDs in the mail. So, but anyway, let me go call Amazon now. But that drone sound you hear is not the government's peering at you. It's my package coming to you. So, but anyway, he's doing his best wig out. And I love the way he, like, the camera and him work around the stage there. He's got the gun in one hand, the knife in the other. He swaps them over while she's trying to get away. He, throws enough doubt on Derek that she backs up long enough for him to shoot him. I mean, I liked the way he unveiled his plans and his plot. And for the most part, it's ridiculous, but I kind of like the fact that Mrs. Loomis realized, well, I got to go get revenge, but I got to have somebody, that's physically capable of doing some damage to people. So as Ron has surmised, she went and found a PTSD victim and on an internet chat board and got him going, which I don't know if you caught that or not, Brian. There's some more technology for you. It's some kind of listserv they were all on for serial killer fanboys or something. Really, really strange.
Sure.
Yeah. So but
it's like back then when you were on AOL and you got into a chat room about certain things, right?
Yeah, it was
chat rooms for everything.
Yeah, it was a chat room. You're correct. So,
but I think that her being so strong in a way kind of makes Mickey's attempt to muddy the waters not as successful or feel a little more artificial. Because, like you said, she trusts her gut, she's a survivor, blah, blah, blah. Well, why does she believe, why does she choose that moment to start doubting herself?
Because of her own past trauma, maybe? The boyfriend did it before? I'm with you. I agree with what you're saying. You're right. But I think that's what we're supposed to buy from it is that, well, I believe Billy up to the point that I screwed him, and then that he turned out to be the killer. So maybe I'm wrong again. It's just enough doubt. It's like just all he needed her to do was take 2 steps back anyway, so he could shoot. Which he could have just shot Derek anyway. It's not like Jerry O'Connell wasn't in a compromised position, as it were. I think he just wanted to fuck with her.
Yeah, I agree with Jay on that one. I think that the whole past plays in a big part here. That the boyfriend, because she was betrayed by her boyfriend before, and let's face it, there's plenty of opportunity here to cast some doubt on Jerry O'Connell's character. So I can see that being the case.
I think that's one of the reasons why they included that weird song and dance number that Jerry O'Connell does. It's to make us look at him and be like, something's wrong with this guy, because, he's Russian dancing on top of somebody's salad bowl.
maybe that was it. That might be the byproduct of it. I think they wanted us to think he really loves her, and he even like his dying words are like, "I would have never hurt you," So,
right,
yeah. And then he's taken up out of the way because we're done with him, and we don't need to see him anymore. So, I don't know. I like that point up until the point that it all starts becoming this like shootout Mexican standoff thing. Because, okay, Laurie Metcalf shows up with that gun, right? And she, we talked about last time how Gail holding that Beretta looked like she didn't know what the hell she was doing, right? Well, she doesn't look like she knows what she's doing with that Glock either. And like she's shaking the whole time or whatever. And then she like just caps Mickey, out of nowhere. And puts 5 or 6 in him, right? He gets off a shot and shoots Gail into the orchestra pit. And I'm like, okay, first off, you just took a shot in the side, bounce off of a rib, my ass. That's going to go straight through it at that range. And 2, you just fell in an orchestra pit. I don't know if you guys have been around orchestra pits. It's not exactly a short fall. So, and there's stuff to hit on the way down.
That's true.
So I'm like, Gail and Dewey should both be dead at this point. So, So that's another problem that I'm going to have. So it becomes this Western shoot 'em up standoff at that point. And I know Sidney thwarts him in the last one with the guns, but I always kind of hate that the ending of these Scream movies always goes around somebody shooting somebody, because that's the thing in a horror movie is if you ever had a gun, oh man, you could do something to somebody until Jason Zombie showed up. But the gun was like the ultimate weapon, and now it's like, yeah, it just kind of feels, I don't know, cheap.
Right. I think so too. And it would have been better if she used the killer's weapon.
But the knife?
Yeah. Well, I think anyway.
I would have been fine if and by the way, whatever that college is devoting to their theater department, bravo, those special effects were amazing. If the special effects had electrocuted her or something. So, because that was impressive.
It looked like she was throwing the electric chair there, yeah.
I mean, they did
every time she flipped the switch.
Yeah.
Yeah, they did drop hundreds of pounds of lights at her. Something should have there should be some live cables down there. Right.
There's that should have taken her down. I would have been fine with that if something had swung by and just cracked her. Right? And, that would have been okay. I didn't need the shootout at the OK Corral, which is kind of what we got here. And I feel like that, again, is the compromise of an ending that had to be changed late in the process and a film that they were in a real hurry to get done. And there's a story that, Williamson discovered that there were guards outside of his office at Miramax making sure he was getting pages of Scream done every day. The Weinsteins hired people just to make sure he was working on it. And not working just on Dawson's Creek or whatever else he had going on at the time. So I think he had that. He had a movie going, and Teaching Mrs. Tingle was going on. He had 6 or 7 other things going at the same time. So the guy was working himself to death. So maybe it's a product of just whatever, it's over. And then that's it. But Cotton shows up at the end. That's the cool part. Cotton finds the other gun. Right, and does his great leap onto the stage, and I do like the little back and forth he has, and you realize he's telling Sidney, "I need you to step to the side so I can shoot this lady," and they have that whole Diane Sawyer thing. I think that was funny. That was actual good comedy there.
Yeah, that really that whole thing kind of worked for me too. That was a really enjoyable little sequence, and it kind of helps. I don't know, it kind of helps flesh out Cotton Weary a little bit more, because he's not just a brooding quasi-sociopath.
Right, because at the end he's like, oh, that was intense. Oh, wow. Sidney, I would never, right, we're cool, right? And she's like, give me the gun. He's like, of course. He's just sort of shaking. And I'm like, that's actually real, though. I give that because Schreiber's an amazing actor and found something there to do. I don't think that was written for him, and I'm certain Craven didn't direct him to do it that way because that's not what he does. I imagine he did that, and it works in that moment for that part of the role, for sure. But the thing I hate, though, man, is, okay, Gail lives, fine, whatever. So Gail's alive. We have that whole ridiculous thing there. And then she gets the other gun, and they're both looking at Mrs. Loomis thinking, should we shoot her again? And then Mickey does that, what was that resurrection from the deep thing he did before they shot him 100,000 times and blew him 20 feet backward?
It was the, I'm still alive and I'm going to kill you. And then you're like, what was the point of that?
No, yeah. I'm like, he did not.
They always come back.
Did we need that again? I would have been fine if that didn't happen and Sidney just capped one in her anyway and said, well, not this time. I would have been okay with that she is that cold and that hard. Because after these two experiences, I can totally believe she's not finishing the semester. She's done. Sidney's going away.
Yeah, I don't know. I agree with you. I don't think there was a point to having Mickey get up other than the fact that they always come back.
I mean, I think that's
the genre.
I think they did do that to try to further tie it back into the Friday the 13th ending with the surprise Jason child leaping up out of the lake or whatever, or the Carrie hand grab thing.
Or even part 2 where he just jumps through the window for reasons, and then the next day he's not there. So
Yeah, the part 2 is probably more appropriate. But I mean, I think that's why they did it, but I don't think it's necessary. I think it would have been fine to just have. I think it would have been better just to have Sydney just go shoot Jackie in the head like she did.
Jackie from Roseanne, that would have been her name. So, anyway, if you didn't know it. So, but yeah, I would have been fine with that. So as long as Booker came to pick her up for that date on time, dang it. George Clooney was such a schmuck. Anyway, so well, guys, I think we're at the. Go ahead.
I do have to say that once Debbie goes full Mrs. Voorhees, she's a whole lot of fun to watch.
Oh no! Look, Laurie Metcalf is a lot of fun to watch as an actress. I can't ever say that I've seen her in something that I didn't think she was not giving a good performance in. Like she's usually a side thing in most things I've seen her in. Like most recently, I rewatched Oliver Stone's JFK, and she's in that for good 15, 20 minutes. She gets a lot of dialogue at one point, and she's good. I'm like, she's a good character actor. Like that, she just delivers good lines, and she's believable because she looks like somebody you would know. Like she just looks so normal. And I like her when she goes psycho too. She's good at that.
Do you think her the scene where she's chasing Buffy through the house would have worked better if it had been staged more like the fight at the end of the original Friday the 13th? How it takes them like forever to beat each other up.
Yes, I think it would have worked totally better. I think it would have also been a dead giveaway that one of these killers is not like the other because of how quickly the people in the theater got dispatched versus, the way Buffy went down in the house. Yeah, I think it would have worked a lot better if it had been a little more even keeled. And as it is, I mean, Sarah Michelle Gellar throws a bike at her and gets a few licks in, but that's the thing. Like every Ghostface gets the crap beat out of them by somebody that they kill. Like that always happens. So yeah, it might have worked better that way. So the very end, though, where Gail finds Dewey, we've already talked about how ridiculous the scar tissue thing is, but there's a character moment there. She gives up the story because Joel, the cameraman, comes back and wants her to do the big live shot, and she's like, "Screw it, I'm getting on the ambulance with Dewey." And she does that, and then Sydney sends all the news reporters to Cotton, who I love how he gives them a card like, there's a price for everything.
I've got a business card.
I don't have a job, but I have a business
Pay
card.
me money.
But I do like that that ending made sense, and then Sydney just kind of exits stage left, and she's just gone. And I like that idea. That worked. Gail and Dewey winding up together, fine. I didn't really invest anything in their relationship.
Well, I think that they played up that they were going to get together in the first one, so having them finally come back together again in the second one made sense to me.
I want to ask you guys, do you think they got together for a short period and then like she broke it off again once her book and everything took precedence, or did it just never do anything and then the book came out and he was like, holy cow, this woman thinks I'm a Barney Fife?
I think it was a fling, right?
Mm-hmm.
A fling. I think they had semi-feelings for each other, Dewey more so than Gail. Then she got busy with her book, and she became a little too famous to have a dweeb lying around.
Kind of like what happened in real life.
I was going to say that
exactly.
Oddly enough,
mirrors my life.
mirrors the life there, Brian. But anyway, so
bringing up bad memories.
Yeah, well, we'll get to those because that's a couple movies away. But guys, we're at the part of the podcast though where it's definitely time to give final thoughts and popcorn ratings. So, what are yours for Scream 2, Brian?
Well, there's some decent stuff in this movie and all that, but overall, it's not memorable enough for me to want to go back and watch again, as I think is evidenced by the fact that I forgot most of what happened in this movie in the first place. So to me, I'm going to go with a small popcorn. One was so much better, and I think when we get to 3, even that's going to be so much better than 2 is, but we'll see when we get there. So small popcorn for me.
Ron?
I'm going to go with a medium popcorn. It is very much a forgettable movie, but the things that do work really well, I think. Like, I really like Laurie Metcalf's performance is really good. I enjoyed Timothy Olyphant making constant crazy faces. And it's got some good things, but you can clearly tell that they went into production with no script, and at certain points they're trying to figure out ways to connect the set pieces that they have written. But enough of it works to keep me from making it a small popcorn. It's a medium popcorn, but there's no butter or salt on it.
I started this show asking you guys for some of your favorite and not so favorite sequels, entries into horror franchises and stuff like that. And I have racked my brain for the last several days trying to think if there was another part 2 of something in a franchise, and I mean even outside of horror, just a part 2 that I felt so let down by and was such a come down from the first one. And I can't think of one that fails as miserably as this movie does.
Matrix Reloaded?
Ooh, that's
a good one.
Part of a trilogy, not a sequel. So
this is kind of a quadrology.
Well, it was planned to be yeah, good point. Okay, that one, that's a good one. Ron, I had forgotten about the Matrix. So Matrix Reloaded, yes. Maybe it's right up in there with that. It's that same feeling that it's just so bereft of anything that I want to remember or care about. I've seen this movie probably a dozen times in my life, guys, and it is like we mentioned at the beginning, bad pizza or Chinese food. It's just kind of there and gone. It's cotton candy. I mean, it's everything I want it to be. It does everything I say I want in a horror movie and a horror sequel, but none of it really stays. And oddly enough, I don't think, even as it made the same money as the last one, basically, oddly enough, when they go to do the third one, they almost completely ignore that this one even happens. If memory serves correct from part 3, that they didn't even, I don't think they referenced much of it. It's such a strange thing to watch, the redux of what I liked last time done so haphazardly. And if it weren't for performances like Jamie Kennedy's and David Arquette's and Timothy Olyphant and Laurie Metcalf, I would have a hard time watching this. And I'm not knocking Nev or anything. I don't think she was given much of anything to do except look terrified and like she was on the verge of tears at all times, which may be like her acting thing anyway. I'm trying to think of anything I've seen her in where she didn't look that way. And Courtney Cox was awful in this, but that may have been the script. But either way, those side characters carry it, but they're not in it enough to really make me care about it, and it's just disappointing. It's just a big flub. And I mean, I think about even the big horror franchises: Friday the 13th 2, Halloween 2, even Nightmare on Elm Street 2. That's not one of the big ones, please.
It is 2. Come on,
Child's Play 2.
Nightmare on Elm. Say what?
Child's Play 2.
Hey, that one's okay. Child's Play 3 is
Poltergeist
an underrated gem. Poltergeist 2 is creepy. That guy's he's the preacher. That's creepy, man. It's not a great movie, but it's okay.
Exorcist 2.
That's a bug nuts crazy movie right there. Okay, but it's
The Omen 2.
Never seen it, so
what
to be, and I still haven't seen Ginger Snaps 1 or 2, so I can't compare it to everything. But of the ones I've seen, Hellraiser 2 is still pretty good. It's not as good as Hellraiser 1, but it's pretty good. This one though, complete fall off the cliff. No,
I got a good one for you.
Small popcorn, burnt all the way. What you got?
Gremlins 2.
You know what? I've only seen it once, Brian. And
that's enough.
And I never wanted to see it again, so maybe that's up there too.
I love Gremlins 2. What's wrong with you?
What?
Oh, I feel like I know what our December is going to be doing. So now, guys,
more of these
all right.
So
snowman movies.
Gremlins 2, you need to look at it through the mirror of they kind of twisted Joe Dante's arm to make him do it, and he wanted to do it in such a way that there could never be a Gremlins 3.
Well, I think he succeeded. So, mission accomplished.
That he did.
Is that like what Rob Zombie did with his Halloween 2? Make sure there can never be another one ever?
I really dug that one.
You know what, though?
Sorry.
As a movie, it's an interesting experience. As a Halloween movie, it sucks. But anyway, so that's the same way I feel about part 3, though.
If you look at it through the lenses I put on, it's actually pretty well done.
Well, people can listen to that discussion as well in the archives. I think we've done exactly what every sequel podcast does. We've plugged all of our old stuff. So
it's all good stuff.
We haven't mentioned the American Ninja franchise that Ron and I did, by the way, and that is some Michael Dudikoff heaven, and you need to go visit that, people, if you haven't done it. So some good times there. But no, it's been fun talking Scream 2 with you guys. A lot more fun than it was watching it, I'll promise you that. And so I'm looking forward to getting back and to talk about Scream 3, though, because I don't have good memories of this movie, but I've only seen it a very few amount of times completely on the way through, like on purpose. Like it'd be on TV and I'd see a piece of it here and there, but I only like sat down to watch it, I think on purpose, maybe like 3 times. So I remember very little about it except what the big twist is. And we'll get to that next time. So looking forward to talking to that one with you. Of course, folks, if you've heard us talk about for the last hour or so here, there's a lot of other podcasts in our archive section, all available on our iTunes feed and on our website, continuousplaypodcast.com/movies. If you like the show, leave us a good review on iTunes. It helps other people find the show. Pass the word along. We appreciate the support. Till next time, for Brian and Ron, I'm Jay. Thanks for listening to Film Strip.
Thank you for listening to Film Strip. You can find more episodes on our website, continuousplaypodcast.com/movies. Please leave us a positive review on iTunes and link up with us on Facebook. The Film Strip theme music is produced and performed by Frozen Lake 121.